8:32 in the Tennessee Valley, and it's time for our special edition of Inside Oakwood with Dr. Leslie Pollard. We thank all of you for joining us today, and you, Dr. Pollard. How you doing, Dr. Pollard, out there today?
I'm doing very, very well. It's a great Thursday to be alive.
Wonderful. Yes, it is. It's that winning Thursday that we have, Triumphant Thursday today. And so we're glad to have you with us today, along with some other winners as part of the special edition of Inside Oakwood University. But Dr. Pollard, I got to ask you got a special word for us today, or we're going to get right into it?
Yes. There is a very important passage in the book of Luke, chapter 13, verse 4, and I'm putting it in the context of this coronavirus. There was a day when Jesus was talking to some of the teachers in Jerusalem, and a terrible incident had befallen Jerusalem. There was a tower that had fallen and killed 18 people. And then Jesus asked them a question. He said, "Do you think that tower fell on those people because you were more righteous than they?" And then he said, "Except you repent, you shall all likewise perish." One commentator, in looking at this verse, talked about the psychological problem that people often have, that Jesus nailed back in his address to the listeners that day. Do you think this happened to them because somehow this didn't happen to you because you are somehow qualitatively, intrinsically different than they are? And they call that optimistic bias.
Yes.
Bad things will happen to other people, but they will never happen to me. That's what the guests we have on today can tell you, that with this virus, it comes to Christians, it comes to non-Christians, Buddhists, Muslim, whatever we are, that none of us can escape its ravages. And so Jesus' word was, be careful of optimistic bias, of believing that what happens to other people will never happen to me. We also call that, adolescent overconfidence, that others may get this sickness, this illness, this sexually transmitted disease, pregnancy, but not me. That'll never happen to me. Optimistic bias.
Wow.
And the way to correct for that is to admit our frailty and our humanity, and to say, as Jesus said, whatever happens to one can happen to any. The rain falls on the just and it falls on the unjust, but it does fall on the just. Everybody gets rained on at some point in their life. And all we have is our confidence and our trust in God that he knows what is best, and that he has promised whatever comes to us, he will never leave us and never forsake us. But we are far more like the people that we see falling to this virus than we're unlike them. And so it pays for us to practice carefulness and gratefulness as we march through our days. So that's the word of the day.
Wow, that's a deep word. That's a word from on high. Thank you so much for that, Dr. Pollard. And so timely.
Welcome,
so timely right now because of our guests today. We know they see all kinds of people coming in to the hospital, and they are caring for the folks. Our guests today are not only unique because they are on the front lines, but they're unique because they're sibling. We have on the line Dr. Naeem Newman, who's an oncologist, Dr. Mandisa McIver, who is a pediatrician, and Seth Newman, who is a firefighter and EMT. Welcome to Inside Edition, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Now, Dr. Pollard, I know why you wanted to have them on. Tell us why you wanted to have them on.
Okay, because first of all, this is a wonderful family. I've had the privilege of being blessed by each of them in different ways across their journey, and watching them grow and develop into the professionals that they've become. It actually makes us very proud at Oakwood University, and me personally, of course, but it's always bigger than me as a person. It's what the institution shares and does and gives, and to watch young students come, and then to move on and to move out. They enter to learn. That's our motto.
Yes.
Enter to learn and then depart to serve. And in the fight against this virus, we are proud of the members of the Newman family for what they are doing to keep human beings, to keep our citizens, our fellow citizens, safe and healthy, and then helping them get well if need be.
Right.
in so many variety of ways. So they represent the finest of what Oakwood has to offer, and we're just so proud and even honored to have them on the radio broadcast this morning.
Wow. So can each of you tell us what it looks like on the front lines in each of your respective areas?
We can let our
I
sister
can
go
start
first.
off. Oh, okay.
Hi, this is Mandisa.
That's brothers
Thank
and
you so
sisters.
much for having us.
Hi, Mandisa.
Hi. So,
Oh, by the
work
way,
at
Donna,
the-
Yes.
why don't we say a little bit about what each of them does? Let them introduce themselves
Yes.
first, because we know them. Let's make sure our listeners know them.
Yes.
So, would each of you just say a little bit about who you are and what you do, and then we'll go into the conversation on some of the application of what you're doing.
Okay, so I'm Mandisa McIver. I am a pediatric emergency medicine physician, and I currently work at Children's National Medical Center in D.C.
All right. Dr. Newman?
My name's Naeem Newman. I'm a surgical oncologist at Anne Arundel Medical Center in Annapolis, Maryland.
And Seth?
Okay. I'm the youngest.
That's why
my
you went
name is
last.
Seth.
That's why you went last, Seth. That's why you went last.
Seth Newman. I am currently a firefighter / EMT for the District of Columbia Fire Department.
So all of you are working on some level on the front lines of COVID-19. And so I'm sure that this has really changed the way you do your job, right? Any of you?
Definitely.
How has it changed?
Absolutely, for me. Well, for one, since I do cancer surgery, the COVID-19 virus does not stop cancer. So I have been able to continue doing cancer surgery, removing cancers, because cancer patients cannot wait 3 or 4 months to have their cancer removed. But at the same time, I've been unable to do a lot of the other surgeries I would normally do, like hernia repairs, gallbladder surgery, and things like that. I've also been redeployed in the hospital and have been doing more emergency surgery to kind of fill in the void, because some of our emergency surgeons have been redeployed to take care of the COVID-19 patients. So I've filled in the gap to do some of the more emergent surgeries that come in through the emergency department.
And what's the thing that really kind of hits you hard, Dr. Newman?
The thing that hits me hard is the loneliness of the patients.
Wow.
Even for my cancer patients who are, going to be in the hospital 7 to 10 days, sometimes 2 weeks, they cannot have any visitors. I've had a few patients who were very sick, and I've had one patient pass away during this time, and no family was allowed to be there with them until their final moments when it was, almost too late to even have any meaningful conversations with them.
I can imagine that is very hurtful. I mean, and to see that over and over happening over and over again, it's a lonely. We understand a lonely death to have to go through. So, Dr. McIver, you are a pediatrician. How has the COVID-19 changed what you're doing and how you're working to care for patients?
So it's interesting. In the pediatric emergency room, we're seeing fewer patients come in because the virus is not impacting pediatric patients the same way it's impacting adult patients. And with this stay-home order, we're really pushing families with young children to stay home and not come to the emergency room unless it's a true emergency. So in the past, you would bring your child in for, a cough or a fever or a rash. If they're not sick, we're telling parents to stay home. So our volumes have gone down. So what we've done is we have said we want to be more helpful. And so the emergency rooms for adults are filling up and they're overwhelmed. So we've now increased our age limit to 29. So we'll see up to 29-year-olds.
Oh, wow.
And that's a big change for us. We're having to be trained to take care of adult patients on ventilators and kind of go back and review adult disorders and medical conditions so that we're prepared for these patients.
Wow, that's amazing. Folks like me who are just normal, average people don't even think about things like that. Those type of things that actually change because of this pandemic. So now I really want to hear actually also from Seth too. He's a firefighter. He has a different perspective of how the front line looks for him. You're a firefighter, Seth, and you're an EMT. So you're out there in the community. Your sister and brother are in the hospitals and working on that level, but you're out there bringing them in. Tell us about what that looks like.
Correct. It's a lot rougher now than usual because I'm in D.C. Our 911 call volume has always been extremely high, close to 600 calls a day, and we only have 33 stations. Now, with the COVID going on, our schedules have changed. We used to work 24 hours on, and then we would be off for 72 hours, which is 3 days. Now we work 36 hours on, and we're off for 48 hours. So less time you get to spend with your family, more time you're spending, at work. The way we run calls now, before you pull up to a trauma scene or, a car accident, and you run out with just gloves on, and you start performing your normal task. Now you can only send one person out of a vehicle, and they have to assess the patient and know that if they have a fever or any symptoms of COVID, then the rest of the crew has to now gown up and put on goggles and face shields and gowns, things that delay care for the patient.
Wow. So I got to ask you, how's God really pulling you through this and giving you the strength? Is there a Bible text that helps push you, encourage you through all of these things that all of you are dealing with?
I had an interesting conversation. One day I was walking onto the surgical unit, and just as I was walking onto the unit, there was a nurse that was there crying. And, I asked her what was going on, and she said her brother had just been put on a ventilator in New York, and it did not look good for him. And that brother later did pass away a few days later. But at that moment, I was able to give her Psalm 55:22, which is a psalm I give to a lot of my cancer patients. And it says, cast your cares on the Lord, and he will sustain you. He will never let the righteous fall. And we have that promise that we can take our cares, our anxieties, our stress, and give them to God. And he will hold us up and sustain us during these tough times.
Yes. So you all, in addition to working on the front lines, you know what's really, really happening, and we're praying for all of you out there. But we also know about this growing concern. When COVID first came out, people were thinking that African Americans weren't going to get it, or we were going to survive it and all that. But that's not true, right? What the effects that COVID-19 has had on the African American community is very different from what we thought it would be, right? Is that true?
That is very true. As Dr. Pollard said, the virus attacks any and everybody. It is no respecter of persons. But Black people, African American people, are dying at a higher rate than other races. And the reason that is there's a multifold reason for that, and we could spend hours talking about lack of access to care, food deserts, food swamps. But one thing that we can begin to really take control of in our community is what we call comorbidities. The disease attacks anybody, but it kills those who have other medical problems like hypertension, diabetes, heart disease, obesity, or any kind of lung issues like COPD or asthma or kidney failure. the disease is killing people that have those comorbidities. So as a community, the one thing we can really take control of is battling these comorbidities that are affecting our community at a higher rate. Part of the reason why Black people are dying at a higher rate than other races is because we also have these comorbidities as a higher rate than other races.
Wow.
So in preparing for the next pandemic that comes, we have to really take ownership of our health, what we put in our mouth and our exercise. That is something that we cannot necessarily blame on others. That's something we can take control of ourselves.
And what can we do?
Donna,
Yes, go ahead,
Donna,
Doctor. Yes.
Donna, one of the things that strikes me as I listen to the family speak this morning, and again, you hear all the reasons that we're just so honored and proud of what they're doing in terms of service. Every year we do Healthy Campus 2020. That's what we called it when we launched it. And that program has won awards across the nation for its innovation and its comprehensiveness. So one of the things, Donna, that our listeners might find interesting is that for every freshman class that comes in, we do a full biometric health workup as a part of registration. And each freshman receives a health transcript. They get a sense of what are their conditions, what are the things that they're fighting. In the last 4 years, consistent across that data, we have found that 25% of our entering freshmen are already pre-diabetic.
Wow.
That's striking. That's striking in light of what Dr. Newman has just mentioned. So part of what we have to do in the educational entities like Oakwood and others, especially with underserved populations like African Americans and Latinos, is to teach from the earliest possible moments those principles of health management. And I have a question for our panel this morning. And again, we thank you so much for taking time to be with us. How do you educate patients around the health principles that have distinguished the Seventh-day Adventist Church? This is before we even get to the faith in God in Jesus Christ. But the whole health message, what creative ways do you use to communicate that when the opportunity presents itself?
Well, I can say for me in the pediatric emergency room, in that setting, we don't have a lot of time with each family. And, they're coming in for one complaint, but a lot of times we will have to address obesity or hypertension in children, young children, before they're even teenagers. And so I think some of the creative things that I do is first of all, I really try to let them know that they are beautiful, they are smart. I use encouraging words like that. And then I address the importance of health, and I let them know that if they can attack these medical issues early and get a good handle on it, then they can avoid a lot of the more serious conditions when they get older. And I try to include the parents, and I try to, we have a lot of programs in the community that I'll try to connect them with. And then I try to connect them with a social worker that will follow up. So there's some kind of continuity. But I think in this day and age, kids are very self-conscious about how they look, and you have to be very careful addressing obesity with kids. I really try to first say you are beautiful, you're wonderful, you're smart, and then I kind of get into the health issues and concerns.
Wow.
Thank you.
Well, Dr. McIver, I understand that in addition to doing, and encouraging your patients in such a special way, you're also actually now being a community servant, and you've helped out with a food bank. Can you tell us about that you've done in your community and in your neighborhood?
Oh, yeah. So in addition to working in the ER, I found myself coming home saying, what else can I do outside of the emergency room setting? And my mom said to me one day that the food banks in the area were running out of food. There was a food shortage, and there were a lot of people in our county that had no access to food, and especially with the schools closing as well, a lot of kids weren't going to get meals. So she said, what if we started some kind of food drive? So I said, well, let's try it. So I sent an email out to our neighborhood and let them know what was going on in the community, and I honestly thought we would get a few $100s and maybe a few cans of food.
Mm.
And we ended up, to my surprise, raising over $11,000.
Wow.
And we
Wow.
got 200 cans of food. And I honestly, in this time, thought that we're all struggling. People have been laid off and they don't have money. So I figured people wouldn't be able to give much. And I was struck by the giving attitudes of the people. So I just feel like when God gives you an idea, don't limit him and just let him do his work. And he used this community to really help our neighbors.
Now, was this a family activity or did everybody get involved in it?
So my mom lives with me, and so it's something she and my husband and I did here in our neighborhood.
Okay. Wow.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Enter to learn, depart to serve. Thank you for serving in so many ways. Thank you.
Wow. So as you now are working on the front lines, I'm just curious, do you ever think about Oakwood University and what might have been the one thing that really influenced you or encouraged you or prepared you for what you're in the middle of right now?
Yeah, well, I can say when I was at Oakwood, there were numerous mission opportunities. And whenever there was a tornado, if we heard that there was a neighborhood that was hit hard, we had a group that would go out and help rebuild. If we knew there was a neighborhood that was, dealing with poverty and a lack of food, we would go, we would cook, we would minister. So I feel like while I was at Oakwood, we were constantly doing mission work. We were always looking for ways to help the community. Mm-hmm. And I think that just stayed with me after I left Oakwood, always looking for ways to help, always looking for ways to get involved.
What about you, Seth?
I can say the same thing as Mandisa. Being at Oakwood, I got to join a lot of small groups. One of them was a prison ministry group while I was out there, and we got to go to some of the detention centers within Alabama, and it kind of taught me compassion. It taught me understanding. Like, a lot of people had a lot of different stories, came from a lot of different backgrounds, and I'm able to use that while I'm working on an ambulance or a fire engine in some of these communities that, don't have anything. They don't have a reason to live, most of them feel like. And when I'm able to express to them, we're here to help you, we're here to care for you, we're going to make sure you're good, just being able to hear that from people of their same color, I feel like you can see it brightens up, their faces. It gives their family confidence in seeing their own people help.
Yes. Dr. Newman, that's on you. You kind of spoke to it a little bit already, but I guess Oakwood prepared you for what you're going through as well, and what your
absolutely.
mission is. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely, and I would say Oakwood is still, serving that mission. One thing I talk about a lot when I go around to the community, different churches, is food deserts, food swamps, how our people have a lack of access to healthy food. And the Oakwood Gardens is a solution to that problem. And as more people are learning how to garden and are gardening, then we have the ability to serve the underserved communities with healthy foods. But while I was at Oakwood, they teach you, number one, a love for your people. And when we're talking about the least of these and underserved communities, a lot of them look just like me. And so we go back wanting to serve and uplift our community. And a lot of that we learn at Oakwood. And of course, we also are learning that God is asking us to do this, to not only serve the communities in health, but also pointing them to Jesus Christ and his soon return. And again, that's something that's emphasized at Oakwood.
Amen. Now, as we get ready to close, Dr. Pollard, I'm just going to ask them to share with us, they're on the front lines, and what are they doing to take care of your own personal health and the health of your family members that you're going back and forth home to, that we may pull from and use and adopt in our own households as we get ready to close out inside Oakwood University. Can you all share that?
I can go first on that. Being in the healthcare field, we're around, COVID all day without knowing it. So one of the biggest things I've learned is, before leaving work, taking a shower, taking off, anything that's work related and leaving it there, continuously washing my hands and just leaving everything at work, coming home almost a new person, a clean person, and leaving work at work.
Wow.
All right. Anybody else want to respond to that one?
I agree. Same thing. We have a very strict protocol at our house. Like when I come home from a shift, everything goes straight in the washing machine. I go straight to the shower. No one can touch me or look at me until all of that is taken care of. And, with my mom living with us, we're very careful about making sure she's not exposed, or at least limiting the exposure. And honestly, I have found during this time, emotional health and mental health has been very important. And I think we're all stressed and anxious and worried at times, but I have found like I have got to stay on top of my mental health. I have to get outside. I have to walk. I have to do things that keep me upbeat, so that I don't get discouraged. And so getting outside every day and exercising, getting enough sleep, drinking a lot of water, all of that has really helped me to be able to go into each shift with an upbeat spirit and happiness, and so that I can really serve the patients to the best of my ability.
Amen. Amen. Dr. Pollard?
Amen.
Well, we certainly thank you. And Dr. Naeem, were you about to say something? Because we didn't want to cut you off. I'll abbreviate what I want to say because you're our guest.
I was just going to say that I think this pandemic is providing us with an opportunity for a new start. And I think we have an opportunity to revive that new start to our lifestyles, N being nutrition, E being exercise, W being water, S being sunshine, getting outside, T being temperance. Don't just sit in the house and eat. You have to social distance from the refrigerator also. A being fresh air. R being rest, making sure you're getting enough rest. And T being trusting God.
Wow,
I
love
think
that.
that ties everything together for us.
Amen. I love that.
Amen.
All right.
Well, with that said, Donna and our guests, we thank you so much for being on Inside Oakwood. You are the reason we do what we do, and we thank you for it. And on Monday, we will be drilling down even deeper into our award-winning program called Healthy Campus 2020 and what it means for students who will be returning to campus, God willing, August 1st. God willing, you have to say that, God willing, yes. August 1st, and how that program will benefit the incoming students. And then on tomorrow evening, I heard Dr. Mandisa mention mental health on Oakwood Praise tomorrow at 7 p.m. We've got our counselors working on issues, talking about issues of how to preserve your mental health during the corona crisis. So thank you, everyone, and may God bless you. And the word of God is 3 John 2, who says, I wish above all things that you may prosper and be in health, even as your soul prospers. So I want to thank these ministers who have appeared today, who help us prosper in both body and mind and spirit.
Thank you so much, and thank you, our special guest, for being with us today, and Dr. Pollard for being here for Inside Oakwood. We'll see you on Monday.
Thank you.